Well, welcome everybody. We'll continue today with our series. So let us start with a word of prayer. Our Father, as we learn more about how to take care of our body, we ask you for wisdom, direct our steps. In the name of Jesus, amen. So I've been actually quite busy the last few weeks. We have been working on a new material. So this is an article I published about coronavirus, how hydrotherapy is one of the best treatments and one of the best preventions for coronavirus. And this one came out in the journal Medical Hypothesis. And there's a second part of this study. We did a practical part in which we took people with coronavirus and gave them hydrotherapy. And that's going to be published later on. And also I wrote this guide together with a couple of other physicians in which we are sharing with you what practical things you can do to strengthen your immune system and what is evidence-based and so forth. It's a short, small guide. You can get it for free. I'll tell you in a minute where you can download this. And also, yesterday, we just finished writing this book. This is a book that we wrote about pandemics, and the focus is the prevention of it. And today you're going to learn why this is so important, this information. If you're interested, just go to the website pandemicbusters.org for more information. The book is going to be available in Kindle also. And in 2 weeks, we will have 1 week, we will have the physical copies of the book. The guide, you can find it on that ResearchGate page, Francisco Ramirez ResearchGate, to get there. And that guide about the immune system, you can get it there. And remember, there's this Twitter account, EddieRDMD, and so does the website, dreddieramirez.com. So we know that things are getting more complicated in our world. In fact, book Acts of the Apostles, there are in the world today many who close their eyes to the evidences that Christ has given to warn men of his coming. They seek to quiet all apprehension, while at the same time the signs of the end are what? Rapidly fulfilling. And the world is hastening to the time when the Son of Man shall be revealed in the clouds of heaven. And you just open your newspaper, isn't it? And you can see these signs everywhere. Matthew 24 reminds us of some of those things. For example, Matthew 24:7, for nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, isn't it? There was a big mess there in the Middle East, fulfilling before our eyes. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines. And sure enough, there are big problems of today. We have both extremes. You know, you have the famine, you know, but at the same time you have the excess, you know, and both of them affecting tremendously worldwide. And then the next thing it says there, that there's going to be earthquakes in many places. Is this true? Well, you see the statistics from 1900s to 1910. There were 3 earthquakes, 6.0. From 1990 to the year 2000, there was 934 earthquakes, 6.0 or more. In other words, 314 times more frequent. And then it says there that there's going to be what? pestilences. And we are, isn't it, at the end of that pestilence. So there is, if you were worried and so forth about coronavirus, wait till the next one hits. See, this is something that we know is coming, and we're going to learn why it's coming. And it is what is called a pandemic influenza. So think about something as contagious as coronavirus, but with a mortality rate of a 30–40%. That is not going to be pretty. And that's why major organizations worldwide are focusing on trying to study this and try to stop it before it becomes a reality. So this disease is going to be called the pandemic influenza, okay? And contrary to what the internet says, you know, is not Bill Gates behind this, okay? I can assure you of that. This has to do with things that we are doing that are naturally causing this type of virus. Just to show you an illustration of how a disease can spread so much and can have so tremendous problems. There's a new set of diseases that are called the emerging diseases. These are diseases that we didn't know anything about it. They didn't exist, period. And suddenly, we have been seeing these new diseases. So, just a few decades ago, if you want to put it in your head, where was this? 1981, back when Reagan was president of America. There's a report that the CDC comes up with on a regular basis. You can subscribe to it. It's called the MMWR Report. And back in 1981, there was this particular MMWR report that came out that was documenting that there was a group of homosexuals in Los Angeles with a new type of pneumonia which you didn't used to see. This was something strange. You know, in the clinical practice, you see pneumonias, but usually there are, the majority of them, certain germs that you see. But this was something weird and uncommon. That was the first report of AIDS. And later on, if we come back to year 2021, 32 million people have died of AIDS, a disease that didn't exist before that. We didn't know anything about it. Nobody got sick of that. So we know that, you know, sexual promiscuity and drug use and so forth has spread this like wildfire all over the world. But where did it come from in the first place? We're going to learn that today. So there are many, many new diseases that before we didn't know anything about it. They didn't exist. Among them, you have Ebola. That's a nasty disease. You know, you start bleeding, you know, from your eyes, from your anus and all kinds of places. SARS, mad cows, and so forth. Where does these diseases come from? In fact, there is something that is called medical anthropology. Medical anthropology focuses on trying to study diseases and trying to understand where disease come from. So you have diseases such as measles, such as smallpox, even the common cold. Nobody got that before. So where did they come from? Well, we are able to trace back many of these diseases by studying the diseases that certain animals have. We're able to trace them back to how they reach humans. For example, if we talk about measles, this one came from close contact of humans with cows and sheep. How dangerous is this disease? Quite dangerous. It's estimated to have killed 200 million people. Now today we don't see that many due to vaccines and all the practices that today we use in public health. Smallpox. Smallpox came because of close contacts with camels. Whooping cough, a tremendously contagious cough. Fortunately, because of vaccination and other public health measurements in America, this is something relatively rare to see. But you go and travel around the world, especially third world countries, this is actually a very common disease and very easily spread out. And you get this cough so intense you cannot even breathe from how much coughing you are doing. This came from close contacts with pigs. And just think about it. How can a pig infect a human? You think the pigs that are running around there in the wild are going to infect the humans? No. You need to have the pig close by. You need to domesticate this animal, have it really, really close to you so the cough can take place and then you get infected by it. Or the animal sneezes or somehow you get that really close contact with it. Chickens, that's where typhoid fever comes from. Again, an extremely common disease worldwide. You just go and check, travel situation in different countries, very, very common in the third world due to poor hygiene practices mainly and badly cooked products. Also, you have influenza. Influenza came originally from ducks. Again, the same story. How can a duck give you influenza? You think the ones that are just flying there in the sky are going to give you the influenza? Absolutely not. The ones that is going to give you the influenza are the ones that are really close to you. They're domesticated. They're walking next to you. Those are the ones that infect the humans. And leprosy, we know very well that this came from two sources, the water buffalo, but also the armadillo. Not a good idea to touch armadillos, by the way, especially in the Midwest, very common animal, because it's a natural reservoir for that disease. And the common cold came from horses. That's how the common cold jumped into human beings. It's a very good book. I have this book from award-winning Mr. Jarrett. And in this book, he gives some very interesting data. For example, when the Europeans came to the American continent, it is very interesting that 95% of the natives were wiped out by the diseases of the Europeans and not the other way. How come the Native Americans didn't infect the Europeans, but rather the Europeans infected the Native Americans? And that has to do with an interesting fact. In fact, if you check the data, you will see that Europe and many other countries before, the contact of the Europeans with the Americans were having repetitive pandemics, the Black Death and all kinds of things, wiping out tremendous numbers of those Europeans. Well, in this chapter, Mr. Jarrett explains why the issue is that in America there was no pandemics. These things were outside of the continent of the Americans. The issue is that in the continent of America there was no domesticated animals. Sure, they used to kill buffalo and so forth, but they didn't round them, you know, like the Europeans, and kept them in one place. These animals were running wild. There was no horses in the continent of America. This is something that the Europeans brought. There was no chickens in the continent of America. The Europeans brought them. There was no goats. There were no cows. There were no pigs. All these animals were introduced by the Europeans to the continent of America. Therefore, no pigs, no pertussis, no chickens, no typhoid fever, and so forth. The list goes on because they were not domesticated animals in this continent. But at the same time, as you check history, in Europe, people were getting wiped out to the right and the left with multiple pandemics secondary to their contact with animal products. So as hygiene improved, as civilization started changing due to the arrival of the industrial age, people started moving into cities, and their levels of activities started changing dramatically. And then a new wave of diseases came. Suddenly, infectious diseases started coming down, and now diabetes, obesity, cancer, heart disease, and all these chronic diseases started affecting humans tremendously in comparison with the old days. And even further advances were done in the field of infectology as vaccinations started being put out, you know, on a public health way. The arrival of antibiotics started controlling many diseases that before we couldn't stop, period. And it seems that we were winning the battle against infectious diseases. In fact, this virologist in 1962, he says, you know, this is something that is going to pass into history, infectious diseases. In fact, he says it's going to be boring, the future for the field of infectology. We're going to dominate all those germs, and they're not going to do anything about it. Well, Mr. Farlow didn't have a time machine to come to the year 2020, isn't it? And he would have gotten a heart attack if he would have come back then. He was not the only one. The Surgeon General back in 1968, he said, the battle against infectious diseases has been won. 1975, the Dean of Yale School says, no new diseases is going to be discovered. We have them all now under control, and we're not going to find any new diseases because everything is under control. Well, something happened back in 1970, and suddenly, as infectious diseases have been coming down and down and down, suddenly in the 1960s, it started exploding the number of cases of new diseases. In fact, from 1975, there are at least 30 new diseases we had never heard. We didn't know they existed. We had not ever seen those germs in the history of medicine. So those new diseases are called the emerging diseases. And you can see here, there is all kinds of new emerging diseases. Look at this. This is from the World Health Organization. Has a whole section there on emerging infectious diseases. In this excellent book, it says that unless we change some important policies and we start making changes as consumers and as companies and as government, it says that we're going to have a catastrophic storm of microbial threats. And with coronavirus, we just got a little glimpse. I'm telling you, something much, much worse is coming our way unless we change. So, let me tell you about one of those new diseases. Not far from this state of Pennsylvania, that's why it's called Lyme disease. It was identified here in the east. In classic disease, you see this symbol, telltale symptom of this target. Okay, it's just like a target if you can clearly see. And why did humans started getting affected by Lyme disease? Before the 70s, 80s, nobody knew about Lyme disease. And today, you can find that Lyme disease all over America. So the story starts with the way that we are interacting with animals. Let me ask you this. Let's say you go and want to get a property in a rural area, okay? So you go way in the forest there and start cutting some trees there and then build your house and so forth. Question, what would you rather have walking around next to your home? You want to have like wolves and you want to have a mountain lion and bears and so forth? Or would you rather have some, innocent looking deer and so forth? Most people, I imagine, would choose the deer, isn't it? So what ended up happening, as people started moving and encroaching more and more into the forest, they started shooting all those predators because you don't want those animals, next to your home. And that created a tremendous imbalance. See, those predators are there for a reason. They're supposed to keep those deers and all other animals in check in their growth. If too many of them come up, well, more reproduce of the predators, they control the situation, and then things keep in a balance. But you destroy those predators, man, the number of those animals that were supposed to be hunted start to explode. And now you create a whole mess, and that's exactly the origin of this disease. As the number of deer started increasing very much, the population of things that are linked to the deer started to be affected. One of them was this tick. This tick, because there's more deer, now there is more of this tick, and now it starts going all over the place. In fact, there are so many now that before only the deer and the mice used to be affected, and now humans starts to get bitten by it. That's one of the factors that contributed to this. So this cute little mouse is the origin of this Lyme disease. As the number of deer increase, also the number of mice increase, and the availability of that disease now was more common and was able to jump into the humans. And this is the nasty looking tick that carries the Lyme disease. Now, the second factor that contributed to the spread of this disease among humans was what they call the fractioning of the forest. So think about it. Animals have certain tracks that they like to move, okay? And as humans started coming and started making roads, started putting, new development areas and so forth, you started cutting down those natural tracks that the animals used to follow, and that means that the animals are more in close contact with humans. And that didn't help the situation. So by cutting down those natural roads, we started disturbing the movement of the animals. And because we changed the way the animals behave, that's when we got ourselves in big trouble, and then the tick started affecting, and now you can see this Lyme disease all over the place. Second factor, why diseases have increased, these emergent diseases have increased so much. Argentina, classic case of this problem. So Argentina realized that people were asking, worldwide, were asking for more meat. So Argentina, it's a big country, and they realized that they could cut down their forest and put animals in those forests. In that way, they could sell those animals and make a lot of money. But what ended up happening, as they cut those ancient forests, humans and animals started getting in contact with viruses and other pathogens that used to naturally inhabit those areas of the Argentina. Other countries saw that this was actually quite profitable to do, so they started doing the same thing to their forest. And the same problem started to occur. And today, we have many new diseases that, again, we didn't know anything about it. Not a single human used to get affected by them. And now you go to many places in South America, and you can see all kinds of new diseases secondary to destroying those forests and putting animals in them. Now, this is not a problem only encompassed to South America. Africa is the same story. In fact, this is where famous Ebola came out, and not only Ebola, but other diseases that are classified as hemorrhagic fevers. Do they sound nice, these diseases? Absolutely not. Trust me on that one, they are not nice diseases, okay? In which people literally are bleeding through different parts of their body. So the story in Africa, part of it has to do with husbandry, putting those animals there, but especially a problem big in Africa happened due to their high quality wood that you would find in many places of Africa. So businessmen realized that there were many virgin forests there in Africa, that they could send workers to cut all that wood, and they will make a lot of money secondary to that. So just think a little bit about it. Suppose that you are a group of those workers. Here they are, they send you far away from the town, all the way there inside a deep forest, and you're supposed to stay there for many weeks, cutting wood. Well, you have your lunch and so forth, so you run out of food, in a week or 2 weeks. What are you going to eat? I mean, there's not like plantations there, where you can go and harvest things, it's only the forest there. What are you going to eat if you are in that situation? So what the workers started doing, they started killing many of the animals of the forest to eat them. And this is what they call in Africa the bush meat. There are at least 26 different types of primates that are killed for food. They like how they tasted, and then they started bringing them into towns, and people started getting, into this habit of eating these types of animals. So all kinds of different primates are killed because of food. And this has opened the door to all kinds of new diseases, including Ebola. That's exactly where Ebola came from. In fact, governments have tried to go, and prohibit the practice, but still, you can find the documentaries online. You go to those markets, technically it's not allowed to be sold that type of meat, but you just pay the right price, and under the table they show you, they have it there for you. So this is how other groups of hemorrhagic fevers and other diseases started jumping into animals. In fact, did you know that that's the way that AIDS contaminated humans? It used to be a natural virus on monkeys, but it is theorized that when humans, try to get one of those monkeys and they got bitten, or somehow they were cutting it and the blood of the monkey spilled into an open sore on a human, that's how AIDS came into humans. The spread, as you're aware, it's another story, but the original infection, that's how it took place. And this is a far from being controlled disease. If you travel to places such as Asia, if you travel to places such as Africa, this disease is causing tremendous problems. I've been to many places in Africa, including, I remember in Tanzania, there were some villages in which there was no young adults. They have all died of AIDS. You would find very old people or the children of those young adults that died. Nothing in between. Very, very sad picture. And places such as South Africa, this is a huge problem that keeps on growing. And the graphics don't look too good. The numbers keep on climbing. Just because somebody wanted some food, kill a monkey a few decades ago, today 32 million people dead as a result of AIDS. Now you may ask, but doctor, didn't we hunt in the old days? Sure we did. I have my relatives, on my mother's side, they were excellent hunters, But there was a different ball game. They were doing things, it was a once in a while type of thing. It was not like every day, they would go out hunting. The food consisted of a plant-based diet. They would, cultivate food, and once in a while as they went hunting, they would get something. But you go to places in Asia, many countries, not only one, but many countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, China, and you find what are called the wet markets. So here you have all different types of species together. You think this is good? Of course it's not good. Animals that would never be together. For example, let me show you this one on Asia. You can find this video, by the way, on my YouTube. Here you have, for example, the bats. They cut down their wings, okay? He's cutting down the wings of the poor bats. And then, if you just move to the table next to that, okay? Here is somebody cutting down a big snake, look like a boa or something like that. You just move, to another table, there's another one. Look at here, these are little hands on the wings of the bats, So they eat both of them. Then you just move to the next table, there is a rat there. These people, eating rats, you know, not the best thing. You just move to the next one, there's cats there, you know. You go to the next one, there's pigs. And you have all these animals at the same time, they're cutting down things. Man, the blood is just splashing all over the place. You walk in there, you know, you get blood in your mouth even if you don't want to, you know. Here you have, you know, some dogs and so forth. And the poor dogs there, you know, ready to be cooked and so forth. So do you think that's good? Of course it's not good. This is not going to end up very pretty. This is another animal that they like to eat their meat, and also they do something very interesting. This is called the civet cat. And this civet cat, they raise it for their meat, but also they have the most expensive coffee in the world. How do they make the most expensive coffee in the world? Well, they force feed these animals some coffee beans, and then this animal poos these coffee beans, and they make coffee out of the poopy. Supposedly the most, you know, wonderful taste coffee in the world, and blah, blah, blah. Super expensive, the thing, you know, because of course, you know, how can you do that, you know? So, did you know that the cousin of the coronavirus, that's the origin of that one? SARS number 1, coronavirus, the one that we have currently, that one is called SARS number 2. SARS number 1, if you want to see in your head where this happened, when President Obama, you know, was the leader of the country. That's when that infection took place. And it is very well documented that that came because of the civet cat, okay? Major publications such as the Lancet have very well documented how, because of that close contact with this civet cat, this disease came into being. Culinary choice of southern China led to a fatal infection in Hong Kong. And 30 countries were affected secondary to that. They were able to stop this problem. If they didn't stop it, it would have been the same story as this coronavirus that we have. So I think that maybe they should be drinking something else, isn't it? Have you heard of herbal tea, you know? Stick to mint or peppermint, you know? That will be much better. But you know, the problem is that these types of behaviors keep on happening. Even though we know it happened, they keep on doing these types of things, and that is not good. Another factor of emerging diseases are exotic pets. For example, there is this disease, you know, we have the chicken pox. Well, there's another pox virus that is called the monkey pox. It infects the monkeys. You can see here this monkey has an acute infection of this monkey pox. But because humans now want pets as monkeys, people started getting in contact with those monkeys, humans started getting close contact with the monkeys, and guess what happened? The virus jumped from the monkey to the humans. You can see this child here, you know, tremendous acute infection of this monkey pox. But that's not the story. You may say, well, doctor, I don't have a monkey. Well, good for you. You know, don't have one. Stick to your cat and your dog. You know, those are okay. But other than that, you know, those exotic pets are not the best things. But the problem is that somebody may have it. And there was an interesting case came out in newspapers all over America. This little girl didn't owe a monkey, yet she got an infection with monkeypox. Because somebody had the monkey, and that infected somebody, and that somebody got infected, and that infected, and then she ended up being affected secondary to somebody being in close contact with these exotic pets. Another story with exotic pets, West Nile virus. That's exactly where it came from. As the name says, this was a disease of the Nile area. Birds there in that area had this disease. But somebody imported illegally some of these birds, and it is very well documented that this happened, probably came in through JFK Airport. And as they brought these birds illegally, these birds infected the American birds. And then once the American birds were infected, due to their migration patterns, those birds started infecting all over America. And today, we have people dying of this emerging disease, secondary because somebody wanted to import illegally a bird from the European and African continent. So we know that these are so important, these problems, that recently 3 very influential organizations started to document, what can we do to stop these emerging diseases? And they came out with this joint report. And please notice what the report says. When you go to the Annex number 4 of the report, they say, they mention the famous exotic pets and so forth. They mention the bush meats. But they say that the number 1 cause why we are having so many emerging diseases is because of the demand for animal protein. So as consumers, we can do something. Our choices tell the businessmen what do we want in our markets. I mean, if you think about it, just some years ago, you didn't find soy milk in the stores. Today, as big as the cow's milk, you find the soy milk. Wise consumer choices do have a big impact on this. And we have tame animals, even in this picture here from the pharaohs, the time of the pharaohs, you can see, they were domesticating animals, but not the way we're doing it today. Sadly, most of the chickens in America, they don't come from chickens like this, that they're just running there and having a good time there in the open field. Most of the chickens that you eat, most of the eggs that you consume come out of these places. This is exactly the place where the pandemic influenza is going to come. Just think about it. Do you think that chickens were designed to live like this? Absolutely not. This is logical. When you have all these chickens together, the probability of disease is extremely high. Do you think these chickens are having a grand time there? No, it's too many of them. They are under tremendous stress. And then you inject all these hormones. And then you give all this fake food. And then you don't have even sunlight to come and disinfect the area. You don't even have fresh air. Do you think this story is going to end up well? Of course, it's not going to end up well. So that new disease is going to come from there unless we make changes. In fact, half of the eggs that you buy in the store are from chickens that spend their life like this. Do you think this is nice? See, by buying those products, you are saying, yes, I agree with this. That's why, as consumers, we can have a choice. In fact, there's not even an excuse today for eggs. They even have these fake eggs. I don't know if you've seen them. They have them in Whole Foods and all these health food stores. They even have them in a shell. okay? They're made out of plants. A chicken never touched these eggs. Much better choices. Some of these farms, 1 million animals in a small area. I'm telling you, this is not a good end of the story. Unless we stop these behaviors, we are gonna get ourselves into really, really big problem. And right now, there's a little controversy, you know, where this SARS number 2 came from. Did it come from an, you know, escape from a lab? Was it natural there from one of these wet markets and so forth? I think soon we'll know a little bit more about it. But regardless of that, that's just one of the many new emerging diseases. And I can tell you, the next one is going to come out of those factory farms. Look at these pigs, how they treat them. Why are they so mean to the pigs? Why are the pigs being raised like this? Because the consumer, what do you want? You want hard meat or you want really soft meat? Of course, people want soft meat. Well, if the pig moves, it makes muscle, and that makes the meat harder. So the consumer asking for soft meats obligates these people to do this. These pigs go crazy. They cannot even lay down comfortably. You think this is nice? Of course it's not nice. So we have changed the way we treat animals. So new emerging diseases are coming out of them. One of them is what is called the Streptococcus suis. Streptococcus suis, a nasty disease. It will infect your brain and your nervous system, gives you a meningitis, make you blind, make you paralytic. And it is very, very deadly if you end up catching this bug. So where do you got that? Well, it is very well documented that this disease came from where? From pigs, especially those pig farms. In fact, the conclusion of the report is that those intensive factory conditions made this. And this disease was tremendously high mortality rate. And they document how poor housing conditions, such as overcrowding, inadequate ventilation, are the risk factors that develop this disease. So this Streptococcus suis had 50% of the cases lost their hearing, and endocarditis and the heart and all kinds of organs would be affected by this, because this is not the way we are supposed to treat the animals. It's not the only one. There was a nasty virus that came out in Malaysia, also because of pig farming. Notice this, a mortality between 40 to 70%. Think about it. From 100 people that get this bug, between 40 to 70% of them are gonna die. Nasty disease? Extremely nasty disease. And in fact, they were worried, you know, that terrorists are gonna get a hold of this thing and then spread it out all over the place, you know, and then you're gonna have a big mess happening secondary with this Nipah virus. And this is very well documented. Without these large, intensively managed pig farms in Malaysia, it would have been extremely difficult for this virus to emerge. So again, you have all these pigs together in a very enclosed area. That is not, and that is never a good idea. And then one of the problems also, because of so much people asking for animal products, from chicken to meat and so forth, is that 70% of all the antibiotics are used by animals. And this is not good, because that means that the bacteria become resistant to the antibiotics, and then the day that they infect the humans, we don't have ammunition to shoot that virus, that bacteria, excuse me. Secondary, that it has become infectious. For example, this study is very clear. They had a lot of people hospitalized. It cost $1 million to do this test. And then they would take a rectal swab so they could culture the germs that the person has inside his digestive tract. And notice this. Almost every single one of those people that were eating chicken, that were drinking milk, that were eating meat, and so forth, they had antibiotic resistance. Compared to those people that were following a vegetarian diet, check this out. Not a single one of them had antibiotic resistance. I'm telling you, this is nasty, because we as doctors may know the bacteria, and we may think, look, this antibiotic is going to kill the bacteria, yet we give it and it doesn't work. You would die of something that we had the weapon to destroy it, yet we cannot destroy it. Secondary to exposing yourself to animal products. So in closing, we know that SARS #1 killed thousands of people. We know that Nipah ended up killing hundreds. Thousands were infected by this Streptococcus suis. AIDS has killed millions. And we know that the new pandemic influenza is not going to be something mild. Millions and millions of people are going to end up perishing secondary to this disease, and we need to stop it before this thing starts by changing our practices on how we treat animals. And the issue with this pandemic influenza is that, for example, malaria, that one you find in warm weather countries. AIDS, you need some sort of exchange of fluids with the other person. But the flu, the pandemic influenza is different. You can just sneeze and boom, you infect a bunch of people. So the infectivity of this is tremendous. We just saw with coronavirus how easy that virus was to go all over the place. And that's why I'm telling you, pandemic influenza, infectivity of this coronavirus, but mortality of the Nipah virus or one of these other diseases that we were talking about. Therefore, enough is enough. Today, we are knowledgeable enough to know that you don't need animal products to survive. In fact, my daughters, I have 3 daughters. The oldest one is 18. She has never tried a single animal product in her life. Normal height, intelligent, does good in university and so forth. You don't need animal products to survive. So may our decisions be wise, and may we choose the best, not only for us, but for our society as we live in these perilous times. May God bless you, and we'll see each other tomorrow. Let us pray. Our Father, we thank you for this important information for our time. We just ask for wisdom. Help us, Lord, to choose better. Give us wisdom as we make changes at home, and may we glorify you with our choices. In the name of Jesus, amen.